Morning Journos back here at the Newcastle United training ground where Eddie Howe has been speaking to the media ahead of Newcastle United's first ever Premier League trip to Kenilworth Road. So big occasion, and looking ahead, of course, we'll start where we always start, injuries. And Jordan, Newcastle United have a few of them, 5 are counted, 5 doubts heading into the trip to Luton Town tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I thought the big one, Dom, was obviously, well, it was Anthony Gordon, but the way Eddie Howe, usually quite a reserved sort of guy, doesn't tend to say too much, but in many ways, if you read back at his quotes, actually slammed Moses Caicedo for that challenge on. Anthony Gordon said he was disappointed with it, called it a horrible tackle, having looked at it back, and yeah, it was ultimately a tackle that led to Anthony Gordon withdrawing just after half time. I think the tackle occurred in the second minute. Gordon tried to play on, but I think there was a run early in the second half where he tried to go at full pace and you could see he was struggling, so he was hooked off, and Eddie Howe says he is very sore, will be assessed today. But yeah, I just thought it was quite interesting that, say, having looked at the footage back, Eddie Howe openly said that he was really disappointed by the challenge, and as I say, calling it horrible is quite strong from him. Regular Eddie Howe watchers of press conferences know that he isn't one to come out with stuff like that, but it just shows, you know, how disappointed he was with that tackle, and it was a horrible tackle. Not dwelling too much, but you know, we said at the time, right down the back of Anthony Gordon's calf, it looked like a really, really sore one.
Could have been a red. It
could have been a red, and if VAR was in play, then I think it would have been a red if the referee had reviewed it, the VAR monitor. So yeah, I think that Anthony Gordon, as you mentioned there, is one of the 5 doubts. I'm trying to go for them all here. So the one after
Kraft in the same game.
Yes, Emil Kraft, which again, by the way, I thought was a naughty tackle. He's got a big gash on his shin because of that tackle from Levi Caldwell. That was just before half time. Again, yeah, I thought that might have been a red card.
He's needed stitches as well, so
yes,
that gash is healing, but yeah, another doubt for Eddie Howe and his side.
There's three more. So the 2 that withdrew against Fulham, Fabian Schär and Joe Linton, said that they're not serious, only sort of short term. Joe Linton's injury might be slightly worse than Fabian Schär's, but as I mentioned there, not long term injuries. They will be assessed ahead of Luton, whether they play or not. I think it might come a little bit too soon for them, to be honest. They both had scans. Obviously, they didn't play in midweek, so I don't foresee them being back. But you know, they might get a row on the bench, but I'm very doubtful on that one. And then the final one, Alexander Isak. Dom, do you want to talk us through that, given you asked the question on Alexander Isak?
Alexander Isak, 50-50 to feature tomorrow. Whether he does or not, we'll wait and see. But yeah, I asked the question, just has he suffered a setback with the groin injury, and would it be a risk to even name him off on the bench? Because Newcastle, if Isak isn't on the bench, they don't really have any sort of attacking option to bring onto the pitch, unless they drop an Anthony Gordon or Miguel Almiron on, but then who comes in for them? So yeah, I just asked that. Eddie Howe said it's no injury as such, but he's been feeling his groin and he's just getting rested because he doesn't want to aggravate that injury, so he's out for a period of time again. But yeah, the reason I asked that question was you put your hand up at the start of the press conferences and naturally if you come slightly later in the press conferences, people tend to ask the questions you initially thought of, which we'll get onto in a second. But yeah, it comes to me, the person before me actually asked the question I was thinking of, and so I thought on my feet and just went, Alexander Isak, how's he? So yeah, a bit of the inner workings of my head from the press conference.
I mean, just in the inner workings of a press conference, I think that's one of the biggest fears in a press conference, when you put your hand up, ask a question, and someone asks the question just before you, and then you try to think of, you're not actually listening to what Eddie Howe's saying, you try to think in your head, what can I ask him instead?
We tend to have a list of a few, but sometimes you're asking the 20th question of a press conference, and the ones you've had planned have all been asked, but we got there in the end.
We did, yes. Well, I thought of my question, I suppose, before we go into other things. Season of fine margins, asked Eddie Howe. look at the last 10 days or so, Newcastle have been half an hour away from the last 16 in the Champions League. They were then 90 seconds away from the semi-final of the Carabao Cup for the second consecutive season. So I asked Eddie Howe how much is that down to fine margins, and he said a lot. I'm trying to think what he said to us now. Dom, help us out here. Do you remember what he said?
He said it shows the cruel nature of football.
That was the quote I was looking for. He talked about taking the pain and getting back up and getting on with it essentially. So I think he liked the question.
I think a few people liked it. It was a good answer and a good question.
Yeah, even though I couldn't remember the response, it was an excellent question. You talk about your question there, Alexander Isak. Dan Ashworth, should we want or Lewis Hall first? Actually, should we do Lewis Hall?
Lewis Hall, almost I wouldn't say a U-turn. We sort of joked he's made a U-turn, Eddie Howe, based on what he said last week, where he basically couldn't answer the question whether Lewis Hall would be a Newcastle United player next season, but very, very staunch in his response today. Big part of Newcastle United's plans moving forward. So and he hasn't triggered that performance-related clause which would obligate Newcastle to pay the £28 million to sign him permanently, but our understanding is that clause is easy to meet, let's say. So would expect Lewis Hall to be a Newcastle United player next season, although the lack of game time and things like that does raise questions. Is he ready? And Eddie Howe has basically suggested that he's still got a lot to learn, the 19-year-old.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he spoke on being a long-term prospect again. So he did admit that they signed him for the here and now, but very much for the future as well. And I think that obviously there's a lot of questions around why isn't Eddie Howe playing Lewis Hall. I mean, look at midweek. I think the last substitution Newcastle made midweek was Matt Ritchie, and I think that was in sort of the 50th minute. So in them latter stages of the game when Chelsea are clearly on top, can you bring on Lewis Hall to try and relieve some pressure or just get another body on the pitch? Obviously didn't do it. That again raised questions. Some fans have had sort of theories thinking, is Eddie Howe not playing Lewis Hall so they don't sign him permanently? As you mentioned there, I mean, the expectation is that he will. But I think the reason why Lewis Hall isn't playing is just because he's got a lot to learn. I think Eddie Howe won't admit it, but I still think there's probably a bit of trust there to be earned from the player. Player needs to, when he performs, show that he's following instructions, because this Newcastle United team under Eddie Howe is so well drilled, and when you're not doing what's asked of you, you're taking out the team. And I think probably it's been a tough start for Lewis Hall at life at Newcastle United because of that. Still only young, needs time, and it's just been taken out of the sort of firing line, if you like. So I think his absence has obviously got nothing to do with the obligation to buy, etc. It's just about the player himself, and he will need more time to ultimately embed in, and hopefully towards the end of the season we can see Lewis Hall at Newcastle United have ultimately committed £28 million to sign in next summer.
Yes, and on the subject of fullbacks, Eddie Howe was asked quite a lot of questions about Kieran Trippier and how's he doing. Eddie Howe, without saying as much, made it clear he didn't really want to talk about Kieran Trippier. Yeah,
he's constantly talking about collectively and rather than individually, didn't he? I think there was one question where he was asked, is Kieran Trippier okay? And Eddie Howe's response was, Kieran's fine. And it was, the silence after that was
palpable.
Death. Well, palpable, yes, that's a better word. He didn't really entertain talk about him, but if
you'd expect him to start, wouldn't you?
You would. I mean, if he's saying that Kieran's fine and he's talking about collectively rather than individually, you think that he would stand by his player tomorrow and put him back into the start 11 and only try and make amends and be on the road to getting back to his best after a very difficult and a very uncharacteristic few weeks for him. But I mean, we were talking before, Dom, about the back four Eddie Howe could name now. Luton Town's attack line, if you like, or the way they attack teams is long balls, second balls, really physical. So does Eddie Howe in many ways go for height in that back line tomorrow? He spoke about Sven Botman's fitness, was happy with the 45 that he did in midweek. Didn't commit to say that he'd be ready to start him, but I think there's a reason why he started on Tuesday and got that 45 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if Sven Botman started tomorrow. if I'm just going for my team here, I think it would probably be Dan Burn at left back, and then Jamal Lascelles again. That's, you talk about height in that back line. That's it right there, and then a right back, potentially probably Kieran Trippier, but Tino Livramento probably does give you that little bit extra height. But to be fair to Trippier, even though he's quite small, he's very good. He's very good in the air. Yeah, so I think you'll start tomorrow, but I do think we'll see a lot of height in that back line to try and counter Luton Town's threat, because they're a tough side down at Kenilworth Road. It's a really difficult place to go, as a lot of teams have found this season. Man City scraped a win there. Arsenal did. I think even Tottenham only won by a goal or 2-1, or it was a very short margin anyway. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I think
Luton Town. I mean, we can touch on that because that was one of the questions Eddie Howe was asked, because his 4th game in charge of Bournemouth in League Two, all the way back in 2008-2009 season, he was sort of thrust in charge of Bournemouth. Both teams handed points deductions near the foot of League Two, and now that was his last league game in charge, playing Luton Town. Now his next game, both teams in the Premier League, and Bournemouth are in the Premier League, but Eddie Howe, Newcastle United manager in the Premier League, and so are Luton Town. So it shows that incredible journey, and Eddie Howe spoke about how he just never expected that they'd be in this position, because it was a wild time. But that's more about Eddie Howe and Luton than it is Newcastle United. But I was going to ask Eddie Howe about that, and the answer he gave was quite nice. It's been a
lovely colour.
Been a lovely journey for Eddie Howe, and shows the sort of great unpredictable nature of football, where teams can be going through their darkest moments, and managers and people in general, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's hope that things can turn around. It's taken 15 years to turn around, which I don't think Eddie Howe needed to be reminded of. Obviously it happened a bit quicker for him at Bournemouth, but I thought it was a nice story.
It was a nice story. Nationals, love
the
that type. They love that. They love that little colour. Us locals are more hard-hitting news, injuries, even though ultimately you will never get any answers or proper answers from Eddie Howe on injuries. But another thing that was asked today, Don mentioned before, Dan Ashworth has been linked with Manchester United.
Yes.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe is expected to, is it a 25% stake in Manchester United? That's expected to be ratified by the Premier League very, very soon. There's talk,
as it has been for the
past yeah. I mean, you just have to go back to Newcastle United's takeover saga to realise that these things don't take. They take a long time. They do take a long time. But I mean, Dan Ashworth has been apparently identified as a potential, essentially a sporting director at Manchester United, or someone to come in and help lead the football operations under Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Now, we spoke to Dan Ashworth was it last month now, or the month before?
Last month.
And he was actually asked about the Manchester United links, having spoken to Gary Neville at the time when Newcastle beat Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. Gary Neville walked past Dan Ashworth and then later tweeted that he would be a great appointment for Manchester United. So he was asked about that. He reiterated that he was really happy at Newcastle, loving the project. But I say these links to Manchester United have resurfaced because of the Jim Ratcliffe imminent arrival. So I'm waffled there, but what did Eddie Howe say to it? I mean, I suppose in many ways he couldn't answer too much. But
that's basically what he said. He said he can't speak for Dan, but he feels he's 100% committed to the long-term project at the club in the future. But having said that, Dan Ashworth has links with Ineos, who are the incoming. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is Ineos company. He has links to them, so there are potential concerns. I mean, I haven't heard anything that would suggest Dan Ashworth would leave, but the reports certainly would.
It's been relentless over the last couple of days.
Concern, because if you look at leading candidates for a vacant sport, or if you want a new sporting director, Dan Ashworth. I mean, look, we don't see Dan Ashworth's workings in the same way we see Eddie Howe's workings, but one season at the club, his first season at the club, Newcastle get Champions League football, and do you judge him purely on the transfer business? I'd say that's probably harsh, because the academy's also progressed massively in that time as well. So it's been been a good addition from what we've gathered, and whenever we've spoken to him in the press and on and off the record, he's been very, very candid and very approachable to speak to as well. So I think if he were to go, again, speculation from our side of things at this moment in time, but if he were to go, that would be a big blow for Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see how these things play out. I think the constant reports are a concern. It may be that somewhere down the line there's an approach with Dan Ashworth, but he might stay here. He's got a big project here, and in many ways, if you look at the two clubs at this moment in time, Newcastle United are probably in a far greater position off field than Manchester United. It almost feels like Newcastle are in a better position on field, but every time I look at the league table, I can't believe that Manchester United are still above Newcastle United.
Are they above them though?
I don't think they are now, but they were.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you always
finished
feel like
above them last season.
I know.
Like you look and go, Newcastle had such a good season last season, and you're just like, how did Man U finish above them?
Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see how the Dan Ashworth stuff plays out. But yeah, hopefully it's just speculation, and he can indeed stay here. As I say, we've heard nothing from our side, so hopefully that means that he is here for the long term. Any other talking points, Dom, off the top of your head? I can't think of any.
We touched on Lewis Hall and being part of the long-term future. Another player, Eddie Howe, stressed as being part of the long-term future of the club, even though I think he's 29, 30 years old now and out of contract in the summer, is Jamal Lascelles, because his run of form, or just coming back into the side in the absence of Sven Botman the past couple of months, has really sort of reignited the sort of positivity around him as a player, because I think that faded under previous managers, and even Eddie Howe coming in, he wasn't really in the team as much. And I think we're seeing the best of Jamal Lascelles again, and I thought we did certainly at Stamford Bridge on Tuesday night, even though Newcastle couldn't get the result we were after.
Yeah, I don't think you can fault Jamal Lascelles anyway. He's been an incredible servant for this football club. I should mention it at the time, but I thought last week the War Flags as banner championship to Champions League, I thought was so. I thought it was class, to be honest. It was a blunt way to put that, but it just summed up Jamal Lascelles' journey. You think about, I think the day that Newcastle, or the day it was I think it was 7 years the day when Newcastle played in the Champions League against AC Milan. Jamal Lascelles was playing in a 2-0 win away at Wigan in the Championship. And I just think it's we talked about colour before. I just think it's a great story, and I think he went through a period where he wasn't playing games under Eddie Howe, and I think for any player it's quite easy to chuck in the towel, but he's remained a pro, and when he's came into the team, he can pick little points where he's maybe had a lapse of concentration, etc. But I think on the whole he's been outstanding.
He's improved.
Yeah, he has improved. I mean, even at Stamford Bridge, we had a great view from the press box. He was pinging passes out of the left-hand side. He wouldn't have been doing that many years ago. I just think his leadership, his physicality in the back line. I think he's been here. Was it nine years now? Or 8 years, 9 years. Arrived from in a double swoop with a double deal for Carl Darlow from Nottingham Forest. As you think about the money probably Newcastle have paid for him and the amount of service they got out of him, I think he's been an unbelievable servant. And yeah, he's as it stands out a contract at the end of the season. But Eddie Howe said in that press conference there that he sees him as a long-term part of his plans, which I can't disagree with at all. He probably isn't the starter, but you look at what he's done. If they can tie him down a new contract, and he's a man that can come in and play games when there's injuries in the back line, he's always a player you can depend on.
Years to come, sounds almost offensive, but if he goes into that Paul Dummett role almost, where you're playing a few games a season, you're playing the cup games, you're a reliable presence, you're a great figure. If he wants to do that, he may want to play regular football, and you can't stop him from doing that, because I think ultimately he's had his ups and downs at Newcastle, but I think history will reflect very kindly on Jamal Lascelles, as it will a few other players who maybe have had low moments in the past for Newcastle, but they're still here and they're still performing very well, and they've been great servants to the club. So yeah, Jamal Lascelles, I think in 10 years' time we'll be talking about him as a Newcastle legend, let's say. Yeah,
I can't disagree with that.
We'll throw away legend too liberally, I think.
Maybe icon.
I think that's a step above legend.
I suppose so, yeah. But no,
cult hero.
Yeah, cult hero. Yeah, we got there in the end. Legend,
Star.
icon, cult hero. Yeah.
Geordie Waffle.
Geordie Waffle again. We always get this time. We always get the part of the video when we start Geordie Waffling. Anything else to add, Dom?
No, we'll be at Luton tomorrow.
Yes.
We're getting a train, so hopefully we get home for Christmas.
I know, yeah. I know the trains have been absolutely disastrous, I think.
And we're wanting to do a Geordie Journo's Christmas special too, so hopefully
Yes.
we'll get home for that. We'll plan that. When we're going to fit that in, it may have to be on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
itself,
who knows?
So,
Stay tuned.
we'll get that planned for you, and keep a lookout for that on Christmas Day if we get back. But in the meantime, we'll be joined by Liam Kennedy, myself, Jordan Cronin, at Kenilworth Road, where we're reflecting on a match for Newcastle, hopefully a win, hopefully the second Premier League away win of the season at Kenilworth Road, and we'll see you all there tomorrow. And T's and C's, Jordan, do you want to do it or should I?
Yeah, go on, I'll do it. Thanks everyone for watching as always. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Ring the bell for all your latest Geordie Journo's content. And as Dom says, we'll see you at Luton Town tomorrow.